Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. If you're just joining us today, we want to let you know that we're glad you're with us on this Sunday morning. We're being broadcast live from the Concierge Landscape Studios, and we're also brought to you this hour by Extreme Exteriors. And we began in our first segment here, this story coming out of Austin, Texas, with a homeowners association that stated that to the homeowners, you can't water but more than twice a week, but some of you aren't even doing that, and you're going to get a fine for watering. The other homeowners who got those letters said, we're afraid to water. We don't want to go beyond what the Water Authority for the state of Texas there would allow, and they felt that they were kind of between a rock and a hard place. Is that
between
fair to say?
Yeah, between the Water Authority and between their HOA, and what came out at the end of the news clip was that these residents with brown laws may not be watering as often as the Water Authority allows. He said something about you can run your irrigation system twice a week. Anything beyond that has to be hand watered. And maybe what the HOA is saying is they want everyone hand watering so that the grass is green. Is that reasonable? I don't know if that's reasonable.
And you know the interesting part here is that this is so true with life. A lot of times you just don't hear the full story.
Well,
with
right.
folks
We see that over
right?
and over again. But you brought up a good point from the clip and in the printed story. The woman that was interviewed, the homeowner that got one of the notices that she wasn't taking care of her lawn well enough for the HOA, said, it's frustrating. I've spent $195 in June on water. I spent $100 on a lawn service in July. It makes me feel like I really don't want to live here.
Mm-hmm. And, that same thought process, I don't think really happens a lot with people anywhere else other than it seems like than an HOA.
Oh, really?
I mean,
I don't know, Gene. There's some mornings where I go, I just really don't want to work at New Concepts today because of the frustrations of the day.
No, that's not true.
That's not the same. That's not true, and that's not the same thing. Okay.
But I don't think it happens anywhere near that people think along those lines when they live in a city.
I think people tend to accept the authority of the city.
There you go. That's
easier.
That's the point.
More often than they accept the authority of their homeowners association, right?
Exactly. I think people do. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that is it exactly. People do not recognize the authority of someone on a board of directors a lot of times because it's just their neighbor, and they see them sometimes as being crotchety and having too much time on their hands, as opposed to the city council or the state legislature or anywhere else. My point in that is an article that also came out with the Star Tribune just yesterday. And this was about someone who was planting more of the natural native grasses in lawns. And
instead of having a groomed lawn,
yes,
turf.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're beginning to see that more and more, I think, in the city, where people are planting what's called fescue and different types of flowering plant, prairie grasses.
Prairie flowers,
Well, apparently, even in the city, even when you don't live in an HOA, guess what? Things can go awry with your plans. You can't do what you want.
There you go. Your lawn still comes under scrutiny, doesn't it?
Yes. And my case in point here is in the Star Tribune article talked about a gentleman who lived in North Minneapolis. And it says that the homeowner whose prairie plantings were mowed against his will by the city of Minneapolis has now come up with a plan to let lawns grow natural. The issue here in Minneapolis, they said grass cannot be over 8 inches in height without being mowed or cut.
Okay. And these grasses and flowers were much taller.
Much taller than that. And so what happened is things were cut down by the city against his will. He didn't want that. you don't hear him saying in this article, "Oh, I don't want to live in Minneapolis anymore."
It makes me just want to move out of this town.
Here's what it says that this gentleman did. It says that his name is Michael Anschel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He said, "My yard is now being used he said was used initially to set things off, but now a task force has been formed, and it is being used as sort of a test case." And guess what? Mr. Anschel became a member of the task force.
Yeah.
And they are now working on defining a new type of landscaping that will be accepted in Minneapolis. And
that was a very positive and productive step.
Exactly. And the thing that is, I guess, that dismays me in homeowner associations, unfortunately, that same kind of thinking a lot of times doesn't necessarily translate over into the homeowner association.
Yeah, because a homeowner could volunteer to run for the board of directors, right?
Yes.
Or volunteer to head a committee to study and discuss the issue and make a recommendation to the board. I mean, you actually have more opportunities to be involved and to influence your community in your homeowners association than you do in your city. So where they have the most weight and the most influence is where people tend to throw up their hands and just be disgusted.
Don't you wish you could get that message out to folks? Because
I do.
You're right, and I think that's why we do the show, is to get that message. That message out.
Big part of it. We're always saying, step up. At the very least, go to your meetings, go to the board meetings, and voice your opinion so that your board's not operating in a vacuum.
But I think, like you said in the first segment, Tony, you hit the nail on the head with the idea that the reason why that doesn't happen is there isn't the same credibility and respect for authority for someone who is on the board of the HOA as there is with the city council.
Another thing that came to my mind in looking at the first article about the water, and about this too, I think associations need to really think about putting themselves in the shoes of their members. In other words, the board needs to think about that. Maybe what's needed is a phone call instead of a letter. Maybe what's needed is someone getting a heads up. Hey, this is an issue for us. Can we talk about it? Because maybe then if there was discussion before some violation letter goes out, maybe then they could talk about what the restrictions are from the watering authority and how that's going to work with what the HOA wants. Same comes up with towing. Some associations will just tow a car if it's parked in the wrong place. Other associations take the time to tag the car and give the resident a warning that, you're in the wrong place. And I just think adding that respectful step would mean a lot to their members and would make a big difference.
I agree. It does. That takes more effort to do.
It does.
The other part of it, though, too, I suppose there is something to be said for it. It depends on the size of the association. We don't have, I don't think, here in Minnesota, the same size of homeowner associations as they do in other states. We've talked about Nevada and Texas that will have an HOA that could consist of 2,000 to 3,000 homes.
Sure, really huge.
And so, when
you can't get volunteers to help out, who's going to go around tagging cars, right?
And I think you would agree that when you get to that size, you're talking about the size that's larger than a number of cities in a lot of states.
On the second story, though, Minneapolis and the yard inspectors and mowing people's yards that were too tall, I know the city of Minneapolis gives you many, many opportunities to address the issue with them. They're not just swooping down with a notice that says, take care of this week or we're giving you a fine.
That's a good point because, when this gentleman talked about his lawn was mowed, that was probably after at least 2 or 3 notices being sent.
That's right.
From,
and every
the
one of
city.
the notices, I happen to know this from personal experience, owning a home in South Minneapolis, where the weeds got a little out of hand along the alley. The notice says, call this number, speak to this person if you have
Yeah.
questions or concerns about this. And there was a time, I can't even remember what the issue was, where I had to postpone the work because of the weather. Or, it was the dead of winter and we couldn't paint that side of the garage. And they're perfectly willing to work with you. So associations maybe could learn a little bit.
Yeah. And, and again, like we said, we don't know the other side of the story. The part that was thrown in by the news person here who said, we tried to contact the management company and they didn't respond. Yeah. And it makes it sound like they're cold and callous. But
we've experienced that where a message was left at 4:30 on Tuesday, and by 10 o'clock the next morning, they're talking about how the management company had not responded.
So if they tried calling at 4:40 in the afternoon and then they're going on air with it at 6,
There's more. There's often more to the story.
They ought to just not say that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
But that's not going to happen. But I think you're right. The bottom line here is that I think homeowners ought to realize that they should give credibility and authority.
Accept the authority
of the homeowner association board.
Because guess what? They have that authority.
Yeah. And realize this kind of thing happens everywhere in municipalities, all throughout our country.
Yeah.
And again, the idea of instead of just saying, "Oh, I don't want to live there," to be a part of a task force, to be part of a committee, to work towards trying to come up with something that will work for all parties.
Yep.
That is really what a neighborhood or an HOA or a city should be about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was property management in the news. We need to take another break right now. And when we come back, we're going to take a look at our next story, which comes out of New Jersey, where the Supreme Court said a condominium association was not responsible for cleaning up the sidewalk in front of where the property was. More after this.